It's the SKOR North Twins Show. Baseball.
Stay tuned for Judd's random baseball take of the day.
I'm hot about something.
It is one of the fast-rising popular segments across the SKOR North podcast here. But, boys, we've got Twins coaching news. Declan just told us how to pronounce this, so I'm going to take a shot at it. He just told us 10 seconds before we cracked the mics. But the Twins have hired 33-year-old Matt Borhschulte.
Borhschulte.
Got it.
Borhschulte?
Borhschulte.
As at least one of their new hitting coaches. The new thing around, the Twins had this, the Orioles had this, who Borhschulte was with. It's not as often that you just have like a hitting coach. You usually have like a roving crew or roving gang of hitting coaches. But so he previously spent 4 years as a minor league hitting coach in the Twins system from 2018 through 2021 when he was in his sort of mid-20s into his 30s. Most recently serving as the AAA St. Paul hitting coach in 2021. So he rose the ranks over 4 years with the Twins from the Gulf Coast League up to AAA. And then the Orioles hired him away, and he's been on the Orioles staff for the last 3 years. Baltimore, not necessarily 100% because of Matt Borhschulte, was one of the best hitting teams in baseball last year. Your thoughts on the Twins bringing in 33-year-old Matt Borhschulte to fix everything?
Because it's, the off season and we're not actually, completely ripping, PR moves and ownership. I'd love to overreact to this hiring because I love it on the surface. Can I explain why I love this hiring on the surface?
You're going to be positive about the Twins here.
I know.
Okay.
This is wild. And by the way, I've never met this guy. No idea, really. I don't know if I could even pick him out of a lineup. But here's why, at least, I do like this hire a lot. Number one, he has familiarity with all the young core players, the majority of them that the Twins have drafted, a good chunk of them at least. He has coached and worked with Royce Lewis, Trevor Larnach, Ryan Jeffers. He's also coming from an organization in Baltimore that has, a lot of young kids that have been highly touted prospects that have to come up to the big leagues. And a lot of those guys have had immediate success. Adley Rutschman is a good player. Gunnar Henderson is a top 5 MVP candidate. Colton Cowser, who's kind of a sneaky good player for them. Anthony Santander, who bursted onto the scene this year, but honestly over the last 3 years has been one of the most underrated power hitters in all of baseball. And yes, to Phil's point, how much does a hitting coach really have an impact on a team? I guess we'll figure out. But when you look at what Baltimore was able to do, taking all of those highly regarded prospects, putting them in the major league and saying, go figure this out and let's have a plan for you. And Baltimore was pretty good at that. So I know they've fallen short, the Orioles have, in terms of reaching a long-term postseason run the last few years. But I actually like this hire a lot. He has familiarity with this Twins organization. He's gotten success out of highly touted prospects before, and I'm a big fan of this.
Wow. I actually thought Declan was going to come in the other way here. I'm pleasantly surprised by the Twins' positivity here. We've been really hard on this franchise lately.
Yep.
Okay. Judd, do you hate it?
He's 33, which is fine. He is much like Popkins.
That's like how your wife would say, or any of our wives.
Yeah,
it's fine. He's fine.
He's fine. Much like Popkins was, he played Division II baseball at Drury University, was an All-American, transferred from Western Kentucky, and then became a college coach. So they're not going with a guy who has experience in the big leagues. The interesting thing about this, though, is it looks like young Matt Borhschulte got out while the getting was good, because his hitting coach, a guy by the name of Ryan Fuller in Baltimore, had been fired after the playoff loss. So I don't know that they, Twins had to beg the O's to give up Borhschulte here, but we'll wait and see. I just stick with this. At the end of the season, Rocco is desperately defending the regime that they fired. He's like, yeah, our plan is good. Our players got to execute the plan. Our plan is good. And so I did read somewhere else that philosophically there is not a big expectation of changes here. They're not going to overhaul things, that this is just going to be a different voice. On this one, I'm very much wait and see. I'm not upset about it. I don't think that we can know enough to be upset, but I also don't know that this solves your problems.
Yeah, I think there's so many things off this. I mean, number one, just because I guess you guys brought it up. The Orioles were not thrilled, clearly, with their entire coaching staff, despite having a really good season for the most part. So that's kind of interesting. Number two, it's not as simple as this team was good at hitting, therefore, or this team is good at pitching development, therefore, let's go pull someone from that organization. You can't just, Matt Borhschulte was around the batting cages when some of the Orioles' young hitters were really good. Therefore, he deserves 80% of the credit. Maybe he does. We don't really know. This does feel like a really comfortable hire, though. It does feel like a compromise with a manager that publicly stumped for his hitting coach's approach strategically, right? I mean, at the end of the season, Rocco was saying, these guys got to go and put in the work. We are giving them a great plan. So I can't imagine that Rocco was the one the day after the season ended saying, we got to blow up my hitting coach room, right? So what's the compromise? All right, listen, Rocco, we got to make some moves. But we're not going to just jam someone down your throat that you've never met before. Let's bring back Matt Borhschulte. He's been part of the organization. You know him. You've been around him during spring training, and maybe he even made an appearance on the September expanded staff at some point. I'm not sure about that.
Sure.
So it's kind of a compromise. It's not really a completely outside voice, but it's a voice that you cultivated, and then he went outside the organization for a couple years, learned a couple things from the Orioles, and maybe he brings back a couple of tricks. A couple things I want to throw at you guys here. I was just trying to think about the macro ways in which the Twins offense can get better. Now, I don't know if these things are fully coachable or if it's more just you got to have the right talent in place and the hitting coach is just along for the ride. But when you're looking for reasons why the Twins would have been looking in a different direction, if you start to go beneath the surface into some of the situational hitting drop-offs from 2023 to 24, OPS with runners in scoring position, they went from 6th to 20th, 2023 to 2024. 2-out OPS. 2 outs, got to have a hit. Keep the inning going, right? They went from 3rd to 16th. And then facing a starting pitcher the second time. OPS, second time against the starting pitcher. The Twins went from 8th to 15th from 2023 to 2024. I don't know. I mean, those are maybe explainable through injuries to key players. There's so many things that would go into dropping from top 5 or top 8 in these key situational categories to bottom half of the league. I don't know that a new coach is going to come in here and just like wave a magic wand and fix it. But if I'm looking at that and I'm the Twins saying, all right, OPS, runners in scoring position, 2-out OPS, and hitting a pitcher hard the second time through the order, we were awful at those things compared to 2 years ago. Okay, I can see where they're looking in the margins here.
Here's where I'm a little bit confused, though. Here's where I feel like there have been some very mixed messages sent from the Twins. Because at the end of the season, and this became a theme, we basically heard that certain guys, not all guys probably, weren't really prepared, right? Like they weren't putting in the work. They needed to work harder. They had to pull their weight, no matter how talented they might be. Okay, that's a fair thing. If that's true, that's fair. But then we blow out the hitting coaches who we had said previously had a good plan. So are we saying that, for instance, was Royce Lewis not putting in the work, or was he putting in work and was guided in the wrong direction? Like I'm very confused about who is the boogeyman here. Like, is it the hitting coaches? Is it the players' lack of work? Do they know? Like, are they like throwing darts now because they're
it does
well,
feel
we
like
can't trade all the players, so okay, here's our dart. 3 coaches gone. So I'm confused about what I think might be genuine confusion from a team that decided, okay, we can't not fire anyone on the coaching staff. But the reality is, it feels like their complaints about the work of players at the end of the season was probably far more genuine.
Yeah, I will
Right
say,
or wrong?
with Rocco coming out and essentially defending the hitting coaches that he knew were probably going to be thrown under the bus. That's Rocco. That is the manager of the team that you deemed qualified to continue managing the team, by the way, because he's keeping his job into 2025.
Right.
The organization above Rocco, Derek Falvey, is coming in and either saying, you're wrong, this is the wrong plan, or they are not communicating well with the players. So, sorry, Rocco, we disagree with you from above, gone. Or it's just a PR move. And they went and found the next closest thing because he's already been in the organization for 4 years. I would say my gut says this is 70% PR and 30% looking for a change of voice and disagreeing with Rocco's assessment at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I think they know that someone needed to be a fall guy here, and if they weren't going to blow out the president of baseball operations, they weren't going to blow out the manager, that something else would have to change there. I actually, if they were to blow out the pitching side or the hitting side, I actually think there's probably is more cause to blow out the hitting side. And situationally, like to Phil's point, they were bad last year. They didn't live up to expectation, but it's probably a better way to look at it. And they did cut down on strikeouts, like they removed the Gallos and the Michael A. Taylors. They removed that part of their equation. They cut down their strikeout rate significantly. That's great. But then situationally, they took a huge dip too. So the whole thing is interesting because like Popkins had this like approach where he could kind of get players not to subscribe to one particular swing. Like he honestly had plans for each individual player. And I'm not saying that is the right or wrong way to go about it. Carlos Correa loves him. I mean, he talked glowingly about him throughout his tenure here with the Twins. But I don't know if maybe like that way Popkins was approaching things at the end of the day, I don't know if that's Rocco or Falvey that had the light bulb of, well, what if we just remove that set and we bring in someone else who can explain our philosophies better? Like that part to me is still like a question mark of why is this happening?
It is, yeah. It is. I stand by 75%, 70% PR, 25, 30%. Couple things that are interesting just with like Twins, and then I'll even mix in an Orioles trend because, new hitting coach is coming from the Orioles. The Orioles were the best curveball hitting team in baseball last year, according to Fangraphs. The Twins were 25th against curveballs. And Edward Julian basically had his career derailed in year 2 because he couldn't square up a curveball. Now, I don't know, maybe Gunnar Henderson is just awesome at hitting curveballs, and they got a couple dudes in their lineup that just
better player.
Crush hanging curveballs, and it has nothing to do with the hitting coach. Also worth noting, too, the Twins are the second most fly ball heavy team in Major League Baseball, which I think analytically they would say, yes, this is sound strategy because the league OPS is 300 points higher on fly balls compared to ground balls because you hit a fly ball, it could be a homer, it could be a double, it could go off the fence, it could fall in for a bloop. Ground balls, probably going to be singles or outs. But I think situationally there's times when a ground ball is helpful and you just need to move a guy over to third. I know that that's sort of sacrilege in analytics baseball.
Come on, Phil.
But we saw that one Boston game that went like 4.5 hours toward the end of the year. Ugh. And guys, we literally just need you to hit a ground ball up the middle and let a runner come home from third base. That's all you need to do right now. And they're incapable of doing that. So, is that philosophically, do they want to be that fly ball heavy? I don't know. These are all, I think, things to be uncovered between now and the start of the season. Also, the Twins were top 10 in swinging at pitches outside of the strike zone. They were very aggressive, or they were fooled more than most teams on pitches outside the strike zone. I don't know. Can a new hitting coach come in here and, tweak some of these things? Do they even want some of these things to be tweaked? Right. They're just bringing in a new body to calm the masses. I don't really know.
Dex brought up a good point too that I've thought about, and I don't think this particular player is ever going to articulate it publicly, but Correa was the David Popkins champion. Like he was, I mean, to the day he was fired, he was talking, I love that guy. That guy's great. I wouldn't sleep on what this move means, just as far as like, because Carlos, I mean, he's the same guy who's like, I got a list of guys to trade for at the deadline, and then the deadline comes and goes, and he's like, well, I mean, I think they tried. So, I mean, I'm guessing privately he did not go to Falvey and say, good try. He probably said, what the hell? But it is interesting that Correa was such an outspoken advocate for Popkins, and then they blew out the entire side of that coaching staff. I don't know what to read into it, but I don't think it can be just immediately dismissed that one of your star players was like, I love this guy. I swear by him. And Falvey said, yeah, that's great. He's fired, and so are two of the guys who work with him.
Yeah, and I asked Falvey about that at the presser last week, 2 weeks ago, about like, does Correa still have influence on this type of hire or on the next hire? And, I got a little bit of executive speak of like, well, Carlos is such a veteran player and can, we do need to keep his advice in mind, but we also need to keep everyone else's advice in mind and everyone else's, hitting prowess in mind too, not just Carlos. So it was an interesting way because I figured that Carlos Correa was, if he is indeed involved in all these decisions as he alleges he is, how much is he also involved in the hitting coach that he absolutely loved that they blew out?
It's funny because I think I would probably take his advice about a hitting coach hire, a person that's going to be in that room every single day on every single road trip, more than his thoughts on like a lefty reliever.
Agreed.
Remember when the Twins pulled the clubhouse like 15 years ago about lefty relievers and they wound up with Dusty Hughes because Justin Morneau and Jason Kubel thought he was kind of tough to pick up as left-handed hitters? And he lasted.
I remember
like
you told me
3
that
weeks.
story now that you mentioned it. That is so awesome.
So I mean, I would tap Carlos Correa for thoughts on a coworker who's going to be there the entire season more than like a trade deadline rent a pitcher.
Well, and if I may just go down this path briefly to recklessly speculate on a Tuesday, it is interesting that at the end of the season there was clearly some friction in the clubhouse that I think stemmed a lot between old and young. And I mean, I'm sure they talked to people about Popkins, right? I'm guessing that these three weren't fired without at least some conversations. And I wonder if the young guys were like, we don't think he's that good. And Carl's like, I love him. And they said, well, our future is Royce Lewis, Larnick, our future is these guys. So I wouldn't sleep on that because I don't think that we should forget that at the end of the season, that clubhouse felt very fractured. Mm-hmm. And I think that at least played a role in the team falling apart.
Yeah.
Not the main thing, but I think it played a role.
Yeah. So Twins have a new hitting coach. We'll see, because they have a couple more spots to fill out in that room, right? They're probably going to bring in at least an assistant hitting coach. And
yeah, probably a couple more.
So we'll see what that looks like. And then, Dex sent us last week, just in our little email prep thread, we got probably 5 or 6 big questions, off-season player movement stuff that we will get into in the coming days and weeks here. But it is time for Judd's random baseball take of the day.
Baseball.
All right. So I'm watching Guard Yanks last night at the stadium in the Bronx. And all right, I'm hot about something because it's a common sense thing. I've seen it far too much in a playoff game. It's ridiculous. And it's a story of I believe you pronounce his name. It was the second Cleveland pitcher, Joey Cantillo. Is that correct? Cantillo.
I think that sounds right.
Spell it again.
Cant can't Illo.
That's Cantillo. Yeah,
Cantillo?
right. Or if it's Cantillo
okay.
in the native land, it's Cantillo if you're from the suburbs of Minnesota.
It's like Padres, right? I say Padres. It's
Porrigs.
Yeah. And Bo Naylor. Okay. So I understand that the emphasis now in baseball across the board is to have a catcher down on one knee to try and frame pitches. But the Yankees have men on base at this point. And I'll just call him Joey. Good old Joey likes to essentially spike the ball to try to get guys to chase. Okay, that's not like unheard of, right? If I'm not mistaken, though, instead of having their catcher, Bo Naylor, get in a squat because you got to move quickly because the ball is coming in the dirt lots of times, right? They keep him on one knee, and I believe there are 2 wild pitches that lead to runs because there were guys on third base. What are we doing here? Like, I understand the art of framing. I think it's gotten ridiculous, but I understand. But how on earth do you keep a guy? Basically, what you're saying is we would prefer that you frame that pitch. And if this pitcher who has a very deliberate, like we know what he's doing, if there's a pitch that you can't block, we don't care. Allow the run to score. Think about how stupid that sounds. That is absolutely ridiculous. So what are we doing? Guys on first base, right? You're still on one knee. It's harder to throw a runner out, but the theory there is we would prefer to get the strikes. But with a guy on third, it's a playoff game. You're giving up runs. You're basically forfeiting runs. You're giving up runs on purpose because just in case Bo Naylor can frame a pitch.
Isn't there data that shows that since catchers started doing more of that one knee thing, that pass balls are actually lower in volume?
Wild pitches are probably up. It's not pass balls. It's wild pitches. Ball hits the dirt. You got to move. You got to scoop.
I feel like someone
ball's
like,
off the
because
glove.
John Smoltz is ranting about this during the playoffs. I feel like someone debunked this whole thing.
It's not a well.
That
Pass balls,
it's not what you think it is, I guess, is what I saw on Twitter last night.
all I know is what I saw last night was 2 runs scored because the Cleveland Guardians couldn't pull their collective heads out of their rear ends. But pass balls are probably down.
Let me see here. Let's see. Smoltz said last night that one knee down catching helps framing, but has caused an increase in pass balls. That's
No,
simply
it's not
wrong. Pass balls are
No.
down considerably. He said that only because he doesn't like knee down catching and made up a fact to support his predisposition.
Yeah, he's wrong.
Craig Calcaterra.
Pass balls are not up.
Ripping the pitch clock in the ALDS.
Yeah, he doesn't-
oh my God, it was
What's wrong with
awesome.
the pitch clock?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Like, what are we doing there? I'm talking about a fundamental look. Catching's my thing. I caught in Little League, and I'm going to tell you right now, I had a great appreciation for the science of it. The knee down, I don't like it necessarily with a guy on first base, but I get the percentages there.
Oh, wow. Dougie Minkiewicz clapped back at Craig Calcaterra. You do realize that the scorekeeper controls pass balls versus wild pitches, right? Calling out Smoltz. Love the constant disrespect of guys who actually have insight to the game. I guess everyone else knows more about the game because they read about it.
Wow. Oh, Dougie McCabe.
Dougie
This is why
Basebal.
Dougie and
There's
the Twins.
There's our next hitting coach. There's our assistant hitting
Why
coach,
not?
Dougie
Let's bring him
Basebal.
in, dude.
Oh, the
Bring him
Twins
back.
and Dougie.
Bring him back.
hate each
More pine
other
tar.
now.
That's the problem around here. We need more pine
do.
tar.
There is some animosity.
Oh,
But yeah,
yeah.
pass balls. It's not pass balls. It's wild pitches, John. Come on. If you're gonna
Come on.
complain about it, but I mean, I am a catching aficionado. I love catching. But if you can't block a pitch with a guy on third, what are we doing?
You know. So that was Judd's random baseball take.
But Smoltz
day
is
here.
Smoltz hates everything.
He's pretty crusty. Yeah, he's gotten old very fast.
Yeah, he really has because he was really good when he started. I don't get that though. Like the pitch clock, how long would these games be?
Is this another random baseball take? Are we going
They'd be
into a
4
second?
hours. Well, no, I just disagree. I think a lot of the changes are great.
I agree, 100%. On the pass balls, there were 892 in 2015 and only 778 in 2022. So that's
I've got another one. I'll save. There's an increasing problem with scoring that in baseball that has become an epidemic.
I love it. So tomorrow on the SKOR North Twins
fact,
Show,
I'll make a note. Yes, there's an epidemic.
Judd
of problem.
attacks baseball
For
scorekeepers.
scoring.
No, it's not scorekeepers.
Scorekeeping.
No.
Scoring?
It's MLB. Their rules on keeping score on rulings have jumped the shark, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, Declan. But I'll bring this up
Yes.
tomorrow.
And if you don't, Judd will unveil
It's not
it.
Stu Thornley. Stu, we love you. We love you. You're not very mature, but we love you.
Oh, man. Love me some Stu Thornley. That's a wrap on the SKOR North Twins Show and Judd's random baseball take of the day. See you guys.